Don't mess with us Sonic fans. We don't even like this series. I think this is the truest statement you could say about the Sonic fandom as how it currently is, because it's just gotten so negative recently, and now we're hopping on another hate wagon. The hate towards certain Sonic characters has gone pretty abysmal in the community recently, but I think the thing that's probably the most cringe is people attacking people because they like a certain character, or they believe that this take on the character is more interesting than this take on the character. I think there's nothing wrong with stating your opinion, but there also comes a point where it becomes too much, and I think none of that exemplifies that more than the recent hate towards Shadow the Hedgehog. Now, I think everyone has the exact same answer to this question. People actually hate Shadow the Hedgehog? Well, guess what? Yeah, they do, because it's the Sonic fandom. We turn on characters every single day, dude. So I wanted to talk about the hate towards Shadow and the hate he's been getting recently, because I think it's just so strange, because I think it's just gone too far now, right? Like, okay, so let me add some context to this. So the reason why a lot of people hate Shadow the Hedgehog is because of the amount of focus he gets in the Sonic franchise. I'm not even joking. That's actually the reason why a lot of people have started to dislike his character. Not because of the way he's written, not because of the way he's portrayed in the video games, or even lack thereof video games. It's simply because he gets too much attention in the franchise. But why should that be an issue? I don't understand that. So basically, there was a collab made with Battle Cats. There's basically, Sonic has been doing a lot of collaborations recently with different games, different franchises. Like, we got the Formula 1 crossover recently. We got the Hospital Simulator game crossover that they've been getting recently. But overall, Sonic has been in a lot of different collaborations, and Shadow's been a part of a lot of these collabs. But people dislike this because it takes away focus from characters like Amy, Tails, Knuckles. And I think that's an incredibly silly thing to say, because it makes sense from a marketing standpoint, right? Shadow is the second most popular character in the entire franchise, and I don't think anyone will disagree with you on this one. It's been a proven fact to the point where it became a joke on Sonic Boom, the fact that Shadow is so popular. He even got his own video game, Shadow Generations. There was an entire year dedicated to Shadow called the Year of Shadow, but now that that year is over, people have spent this year just knocking on the character, and I wanted to do a few tweets just basically just exemplifying like this entire absurd situation, right? The Shadow hate is kind of absurd. Like, why did Sun change? Shadow is the second most popular character in the franchise after Sonic. Of course, they're going to use him for marketing, especially since his popularity is skyrocketing. Like, this is how business works. Exactly the point, right? And unfortunately, there's a pretty interesting point that this person has made in the comments, right? They basically said, I don't think people hate Shadow. They want to see more of Amy and other characters really bad, which I get, but in my opinion, it's also very biased because I love Shadow, so I'm feeding. Yeah, exactly. We love our boy Shadow. We love Shadow the Hedgehog. But then said, yeah, and I get that. I love to see more Amy, but unfortunately, Amy and others are not popular in Japan. I had a Sega manager tell me that the pop-up store in LA, they just aren't popular, and Sega isn't going to use unpopular characters. And that's kind of the thing about business, right? This kind of thing happens all the time. You gotta have to, of course, push more popular characters over characters that aren't nearly as popular. Now, that's not to say that Amy, Knuckles, and Tails aren't that popular. And even if they aren't, I'm sure the movies have done a wonderful job at boosting those characters back into popularity like they deserve. But I think hating on a character like Shadow, simply just because it makes the most sense business-wise to push his character more, really doesn't make any sense to me. And I think this is completely unfair to people that like Shadow, and I don't think it gives them the right to, completely knock on people for doing that, right? Like this tweet over here. Shadow haters are becoming more prevalent these days. They hate to see a black king thrive. First, that's hilarious. But also, second of all, yeah, it's simply that. Like, of course there is legitimate people that don't like the way Shadow's been portrayed recently. I don't think there's any doubt in our minds that Shadow for a while now has been sort of mischaracterized in a lot of different aspects. You compare his character to how he was in Sonic Adventure 2 and compare it to how he was in the IDW comics. They act like completely different people. But I think it comes down to a point where, people like Shadow just because he's Shadow. Even if he's mischaracterized in like comic books or whatever, we just like the guy because the guy is cool. He has really cool weapon arsenal, but he's also just a really well-developed Sonic character. He has a lot more depth than a lot of people give him like credit for, And I think there's a lot to unpack with Shadow, right? There's a lot of things about him that's very captivating for a lot of people. It's the tragedy of the character, his aura, hype moments and aura. But no, beyond that, it's the tragedy of the character. And I think a lot of people can relate to a lot of the things he feels, feeling this sort of neglectful nature with people, kind of shoving people aside because he wants to be a loner type person. But what I think Shadow exemplifies is that he actually exemplifies the core aspects of what makes Sonic characters so great. It's the idea of opening up to people and being friendly with them, becoming friends with people. That's the true purpose of Sonic and the gang. they exemplified the true meaning of friendship. Despite how corny that is, some of the best Sonic stories are when Sonic and the gang come together to stop a threat. Look at how powerful it was in Sonic Frontiers, for example. The moment where Knuckles and Tails and Amy were begging for Sonic to still be okay even after getting corrupted was such a powerful moment in the story, and Shadow Generations exemplified this perfectly. That moment where Shadow had to say goodbye to Maria was genuinely one of the most captivating moments of that whole story. And a lot of people have now turned on Shadow Generations, calling the story pretty mediocre because it didn't do that much with the concept. And I could agree, right? I think there's a lot more they could have done with Shadow Generations. Like, practically explain why Black Doom came back. They never actually explained that. Like, I get that he didn't, like, die, but what was he doing all these years? What was he just there? Was he just there watching Shadow being like, oh, I'm gonna get you someday, I'm gonna get you? I think there are things they could have elaborated more on with Shadow Generations, but for what we got, it was a really modest view on Shadow's character. Like, to be fair, right, it kind of sucks that after the events of Shadow Generations, the event of the IDW comics happened, which kind of contradict the way Shadow was portrayed in that video game. But I think Shadow in that game was probably characterized the best he's ever been in a long time. The Year of Shadow did such a wonderful job at bringing this character back to his roots and getting to the core of why this character means so much to people. And I think the best thing that personifies this completely is the third Sonic movie. They did probably the best job they could have ever done in adapting Shadow's character into a movie format. And the idea of having it so that he decides to give up on his revenge on humanity is simply because he could relate to Sonic's anger. And seeing that be the reason why they formed this bond with each other and eventual friendship to team up against Eggman is a brilliant idea. It's a lot better than having Shadow, just misremembering what Maria said to him after she got shot on the Space Colony arc. I like how Shadow comes to that conclusion himself, what his purpose should be, and what Maria would be proud of him to do. That right there is beautiful. And I think the Year of Shadow just done such a wonderful job at reminding us all why we love this character. He's not some mid character. People really love Shadow. And if you don't like him, then that's completely fine. That's completely justified. But if you're going out of your way to just hate on him and hating on others just for the sake of it, I think that's just a little bit silly. Like I said in my Amy video, I think a lot of criticisms people have with the Sonic franchise now has just gotten so toxic, you know what I mean? And it's a shame because, the Sonic fandom, despite its quirks, no online fandom's perfect, right? But I miss the days when a new IDW comic issue would come out and seeing people praise it, talk about how great the characterization are in certain characters, and seeing people getting excited for the next arc. Only for people now to just constantly make tweets about why they dislike this certain author or they don't like how the storyline is going. It just kind of sucks that we've gotten to that point. But hopefully that could change. I'm reckoning the fourth Sonic movie is going to do a lot to really bring up the popularity of characters like Amy and Metal Sonic, and I just think the future of the Sonic franchise is really bright, and I can't wait to see where it goes next. This is arguably one of the most exciting times to be a Sonic fan, and I can't wait for the future.